Sono vivi. Ancora in anticipo, devo aspettare che mi dicano questo qua.
In audio c'è.
Mm-hmm. I think we're a little bit early. No, it's perfectly 9 o'clock. So hello everyone. So the first people in, could you tell us if you can hear us and see us? And we'll begin once we have a couple people here, but also that we're guaranteed that you can hear us and see us. So if you're here now, tell us how's the audio and how's the video. Aspetta, lasciamo un commento. Questa maglietta con la riga verticale mostra un po' di, lo sai, no? Anyone here? Hey! Audio and video fine from here in Chicago. Hey Daniel, good to see you.
Ciao a tutti, buonasera.
Okay, let's wait for a couple more people to show up and then we will begin. Daniel, are you... Oh, Santina, excellent. Santina, I assume you're with your stripper husband? Once we have a third person, I think we're gonna have a small group tonight. Seems like everything perfect. Hey, ciao Vittorio. Okay, great. So let's begin. So we have kind of a full menu. We're doing something we don't normally do, is we are frying 3 different things. And so if you have not been to the school, I think everyone has been. I don't think that this is really typical that we do a lot of frying. We absolutely do not. But there are 3 dishes that all involve frying, and so we just stack them together so we can use the same oil. So we are not doing frying every single week. So our menu, those of you who have already read this, we're making what are either called panzerotti or le croquette di patate. Panzerotto is a really complicated word because it means so many different things. It's almost like gnocco. Gnocco means so many different things gnocchi means so many different things in different parts of Italy. So panzerotto is not like a calzone. Panzerotto is a little potato fritter. Hey, buonasera, ciao Michael. Ciao. So we're going to make those, and then we're going to make ciceretria because of Daniel's suggestion. So we'll be doing that for him. And then afterwards we're making le barchette di melanzane, which are little, translated as boats, but they're essentially stuffed zucchine. And there's a little bit of cheese, a little bit of Parmesan cheese in tonight's food. Otherwise, it's certainly vegetarian, but it's almost vegan. You certainly could, a couple of these dishes, you could leave the cheese out and make this 100% vegan. I did a vegetarian menu for Marcia, and I think that she didn't sign up for it tonight. So I don't think so unfortunately, it doesn't hurt any of us to eat vegetarian cuisine, but for the person I was hoping to do this for, I don't think she's going to be here. So, before I begin, Vittorio asked me to talk about antipasti a little bit. So these are aperitivi. So this is these little teeny bottles. You can see the size of my hand. So it's not these how small they are. So you all know Campari. Campari is an aperitivo. So there's antipasti and aperitivi. Aperitivi all come from the word open. So just like the month of April when the ground opens, abierto in Castilian and whatnot. But all of the antipasto, anti is in the word for anticipation. Pasto is the word for meal, so the meal. So these are all things that the idea is that it's going to open up your stomach, open up your taste buds, get you excited about eating. And really there are all the flavors, right? So you have bitter, salt, sweet, sour. And usually if it's a Aperol, spritz Aperol, again, to open Aperol, right? And all of those are based on the idea that you're going to open up your palate and make you hungry. So antipasti tend to be more formal meals. If you just had dinner in your house, you're probably not going to have an antipasto. On Sunday lunch, you absolutely would. There's Antipasto all'italiana, which is really comes from restaurants. It's not particularly eaten in the home. Starting out with a piece of olives and prosciutto and a piece of cheese and all that kind of stuff is not nearly as common in Italy as it is in Italian restaurants outside of Italy. But usually the antipasto most of the time is something that's a bit frivolous, a bit sort of daring, like the first pea pods of the season, or the new little flowers, or something that sounded, oh, well, look at that. It's sort of to amuse in a whimsical way. That's very often what it is. Something that's deep fried that you don't normally eat, or something the first blank of the season. So that's usually how it goes. So I think what Vittorio's questions. So Vittorio, if you want to ask your question again to the group so everyone can see it, but Vittorio's asking about matching wine to antipasto, and I think that he's making a leap, and so there's matching and pairing, and Italy matches. Italy doesn't pair nearly as much. So if you're a sommelier, if you've got training, then you might, but it's nobody in Lecce wakes up and says, oh, we should have a Turgau from the Austrian border as an antipasto, as an aperitivo with an antipasto. You're pretty much going to drink the same wine you're going to drink with the meal. So it's going to be matched by where you are in Italy, not so much by pulling wines from all over Italy. Again, if you have wine training, you're more likely to do that, but the average person does not do that. Nobody wakes up in Chianti and says, I'm from Chianti, so I'm going to have some Bordeaux tonight, or I'm going to have a Barolo tonight. It's a very, very different way of looking at wine. And Vittorio, want to know what to drink with antipasto. So in my opinion, this does not go with food. Aperol does not go with food. It's very, very sweet. So if you really want to match the aperitivo to the antipasto, I would suggest you have something like this while standing at the bar, while waiting for your table, when you're waiting for everyone the last people to show up. And then when you actually have the antipasto, I would move into to light wine. So if you're gonna have big whites, then I would have lighter whites. I wouldn't have red wine and then white wine. Let's say you're serving fish, then I would start off with a really light white, aromatic white, maybe like Falanghina or Coda di Volpe, or I'm talking about Southern Italian wines, and then move into heavier whites. If you're going to drink red with the second course, it's going to be meat or vegetable based. You're drinking red, then I would start off with whites. So you always want to progress, right? You never want to go backwards. You never want to go from white wine to red wine. Red wine to white, or red wine to white wine. Yeah. Hey Caroline. So I think if you think that there's something, I think Vittorio, you think there's some great mystery to it, and there isn't. So small little red bottle is called the Campari Soda. It's Campari mixed with soda water, and you chill this or put it on an ice cube with a little piece of orange or piece of lemon. And this is if you went to meet some friends at a restaurant for have dinner, you're probably going to have one of these at the bar first, and then just by talking at the bar, and then you're going to sit down and then probably start with white wine. That's how it works. So let me get this out of the way here. And Vittorio, if you want to talk about this later during our Zoom session, I'll be happy to discuss it more. So before I make the pasta, let me do this. So here we have. These are chickpeas that have cooked with carrots, celery, and onion, whole pieces. Everyone see that? So they're very, very soft, and I have this broth now. So what I'm going to do is Anna's going to remove the vegetables, and we're going to cook our pasta right in that chickpea broth. So that's going to come back. Don't worry about. I think a lot of people when they hear about this dish think there are parts of it that are mysterious that are missing, and you're going to see everything. So we took those chickpeas. We started off with them like this, dried. You all know what dried chickpeas or garbanzo beans, exact same thing. In the south, the dialect word is cecero or ceceri plural, which is for chickpeas, or cece or ceci for in Italian versus dialect. So we've taken those, we've simmered them in a little bit of water with carrot, celery, and onion. We're going to remove the carrot, celery, and onion. So essentially we have is cooked chickpeas. They're sort of breaking apart, sort of a slurry, and that chickpea broth that we cooked it in. So that's going to come back up in a moment. Before I move on and start making the pasta, I'm drinking a pink form of a Rosato from, I'll show you the bottle. You're not going to be able to find this. This wine is not imported, I should say exported, but it is a form of Salci Salentino. And it's called Le Pozzelle, the little wells, for some reason, made by Candido. Candido does not sell in what you guys have. We have Chile and I think the States, just 2 countries. I think we have an English woman coming later. Yeah, this is not exported, so I would not try to find this, but I would try to find rosés. So if you look at the color, very, very dark rosé. This would definitely not be a Provençal model as far as the color. And this is going to have a lot more spice in it. So think about spicy wines. You think about like geraniums and ginger and just black pepper and all those things that are really sort of zesty. When I say spicy, doesn't mean spice as you would think of it as in spicy food. It means more zesty. And really think about really ginger and geraniums are 2 classic flavors that are in the whites of here. So. Yes, we talked about anything else. I'm going to start making the pasta, and you guys have all seen this many, many times. I make a little reserve pile of hard durum wheat, and then a bigger pile. Vittoria, this is made from Negro Amaro and Malvasia. Negro Amaro is the classic grape from here. So while I'm making the pasta, because all of you have seen this so many times, feel free to ask any questions. Close up was really good. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I'm involved in this. So the software I'm using is called Ecamm, and I'm involved in this community chat thing for the software. And I was talking to a guy tonight who told me how I can resolve the camera's freezing up. So I may have, this is the camera I normally keep on the blackboard. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we're going to go back to a 3-camera show instead of a 2-camera. Let's go get that. All right, so here's the pasta, and just bringing in the outsides. This is going to be one of the very few shapes we're going to use. We're going to use a rolling pin. If you do not have a rolling pin, you can use a side of a wine bottle. I mean, if anyone remembers from last week, I was saying that the flour was really strange. It's still strange this week. It's the same brand of flour we always buy, but it's still not absorbent as much as it used to be. If anyone has any questions or have any comments, now is a really good time to ask them since I'm doing a little bit of busy work. Daniel, you're drinking Chilean wine? Chilean rosé? How many portions? This is probably, well, this is a bit weird because this is a pasta that serves in broth with chickpeas. So that's probably 3 or 4 portions. Also keep in mind that we tend to have pasta before something else. So if you're sitting down to a huge plate of pasta, it's not particularly common here. All right, so once it hits this stage, we see how it's still opening. Now I want to knead it. So it's a mistake to get this hand dirty because when I need to change camera angles. All right, I'm gonna take a second to answer this question. You said that appetizers not usually served for dinner in Italy. So how much volume of food or what kind of dishes are usually served for a daily dinner in southern Italy? Antipasto is definitely, it would be like having a piece of chocolate cake on your Tuesday night. Most of you probably don't have dessert during the middle of the week. You probably would have dessert for when you're celebrating something. It's very much like that. So the meal has been, with the fact that with education of girls, you have essentially the cook of the family has now been essentially an older woman, and then the females are working outside of the home, right? So just like it is all over the world. And so because that's happened, you have essentially, and also because better clothing, better heating, and also not as much agrarian life, most people don't eat as many calories as they used to. So essentially the meal has been broken up in two. So most people have pasta, depending on what part of Italy you're in, right? So if you're not in a pasta eating region of Italy, which is essentially the north, then you probably would have risotto or whatever else, but risotto and then a salad, maybe some fruit for lunch, and then maybe some grilled fish or grilled meat and a salad or something like that for dinner. So essentially one meal that's been broken in two is how most people in Italy eat, to your question. All right, so now I have the board that's kind of nice and dry. There's some clean flour down like this. And I'll put this down, and I want to always make sure that I'm able to scoot it, to slide it, right? So, and then I'm using, there's a rolling pin. I'm going to start rolling this out, and I want to roll it out as about as thick as a cardboard beer coaster, those beer pub mats, whatever you want to call those. So Vittorio, to your question, so what's going to affect the color of a rosé is going to be, the variables are, the very first one is going to be how much skin, how long do they keep it, so there are no pink grapes, right? So you make rosé or rosado in Spain, probably in, imagine your pink wine is called rosado instead of rosé. So Anna's too efficient. Putting things away before I still need them. And so the very first thing, Vittoria, to your question, the very first thing, hey Steve, the very first thing that's going to affect the color of a rosé is how long that the skins were kept in contact with the must. Secondly is how thick the skins are. So certain wines, Pinot Noir is a very light red, would take much longer to make a dark rosé than say Cabernet or Nebbiolo or, no, Nebbiolo is not a great example. Cananao, Malbec, anything with really dark, thick skins would stain the wine faster. Then you're also going to have the temperature that you fermented at. So if you ferment it at colder temperatures, it's going to take longer to get that color out of it. So if you ferment it, if you were making sort of bathtub level of wine, garage level or whatever you want to call that, then it's going to be, you're not going to be chilling it, so it's going to be fermenting it at ambient temperatures. Then that's going to be darker as well. But it's all, I think, Vittoria, to your question, every wine every wine is planned. So before there's ever been a serious wine that's been made, there's been a series of people that have decided, we're going to ferment it this way. The bottle shape is going to be like this. This is where the front label is going to be. The back label. This is going to be the marketing message behind it. So it's not nearly as happenstance any more than, like, let's say, if you were going to make a car. You've already decided if you're going to make it, it's going to be inexpensive a car, it's going to be an expensive car, who it's going to be aimed at. It's going to be aimed at female consumers, male consumers, aimed at what part of the world, how wealthy are those people, what are their problems that you want to resolve with your car. All of that stuff is figured out in advance. All right. Hey, Steve. Steve saluta. I messed up and thought I had chickpeas in the cabinet. What would be best to use instead? Cannellini beans, black-eyed peas, or Cheerios? Cannellini beans would be absolutely fine. Probably the thing, so what I would do is if they're already cooked, if they're not cooked, then this is not going to make any difference anyway. So if they are cooked, then I would take some carrot, celery, and onion, cover them with water, cook them much time as you possibly can. Then I would add the cannellini beans after the fact, because otherwise they're going to turn into mush. But you want the carrot, celery, onion, essentially making a vegetable broth, a vegetable bouillon, which is what we're going to cook. That's where most of the dish gets its flavor. All right, so I'm going to start cutting these into very, very thin. So let's say thick as shoelaces. Everyone see that? Something like this. And then because we're going to eat these with a spoon, we want to cut them again. So let's call that ideal. Everyone see that? I'll give a perspective from my hand. So that's about as thick as a shoelace, and let's say 3 fingers. Right? Again, since I'm doing busy work, if anyone has any questions, now is a really good time to ask them. See, for me, I would use white beans. So if anyone of you have been to our school, I think all of you have had this dish. Carolyn's had this dish probably 100 times. Carolyn, if anyone doesn't know her, she was the nurse we had last week, who spends a lot of time in Africa with Doctors Without Borders. And then also she worked briefly, twice, I think, for 3 months at the school. Since I have some time here, we are going to go back, take a second here and announce this right now. We're going back to do our wine class again starting Sunday nights. I stopped doing it because we had a couple of weeks of really low turnouts, which not because I was upset about it, just because there doesn't seem like a real strong demand for it. And then also I've been really busy with all the harvests. So I have 2 harvests left, but I've been waking up at 4 o'clock, or either not going to bed or waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning for weeks now. It's been tremendously draining. And lo vedi? No, basta che togli solo lui.
Sì, ti vuoi il vino, lo butto.
No, togli solo lui. I had a kamikaze fruit fly in my wine. At least one. Yeah, I don't know what that's reference to. So I'll go back and show you this again. So those of you that remember this dish, and again, we're doing this because Daniel asked for it. He's asked for it several times. It was just really too warm for it. But we're gonna fry some of this pasta in oil, and then we're gonna add it as like a crunchy garnish essentially to the chickpea soup with pasta. Dove portare a casa? Perché faccio. No, I can't. I don't have whoever asked that. I don't know. Masa is I only know masa here. It may be different parts of Italy, but masa here is a big block. It's like if you treated hard durum wheat and you treat it as if it were polenta. You make this big solid block of it. I don't know who asked that question because I don't have a picture for you, but the flavor. I mean, if you put it in a blender, the flavors will be very similar. But I only know masa from really far south of Lecce, and it's not commonly eaten anymore because it is it's carbs, carbs for the sake of eating carbs back when people needed a lot more energy. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up now because we already have enough, and I think everyone got the concept. Any more questions about pasta before I move on, before I take it away? All right, so here I'm going to show you here, while we're cleaning up here, here is the recipe for this, and then we'll come back in a second.
Serve un po', no?
Huh. Stay with me for a second. I have a weird thing happening. Lost. All right, so we are making, the next thing we're going to make is going to be the last thing we eat, but this is going to, for lunch, isn't it? So we're going to take the, I'll show you the ingredients for it. All right, thank you. I'm sorry. I'll do that again. I don't know why my audio is not working. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know why. I'll do this again. Can you hear me now? Can everyone hear me? So is it only on the one camera? Can someone confirm? Can you hear me now? Audio is back. Yes. Okay. Good. Yeah. For some reason, it's only on the close-up camera. There's no audio, so I'll use that as little as possible, and I'll only talk when I'm using this camera. All right. So I'm going to take an eggplant. I'm going to cut it in half, and this is the part you really want to use a towel. Yes. So I'll figure this out. So I'm going to take this right here. And I have a little knife. And I'm putting a towel underneath it because this is a really good chance you cut yourself if you're not very careful with this. So I'm going to cut 3 lines in this. Vediamo una padella che riesco a mettere questo direttamente nella padella. So I'm going to empty this out as best as possible. And use a spoon, but make sure you have a towel below your hand, otherwise if your knife goes through there, this is one of the classic ways people hurt themselves in the kitchen. All right, so I will show you this again, but I'll explain it. Explain it only when I have this. So we'll put this aside. Now in this pan, I'm still gonna do the other half, is I'm gonna cut this up really fine. And just steel your heart, this is gonna get turned brown because of oxidation. Just steel your heart that that's gonna be the case. Again, with the towel down underneath it. So if it's not clear, I'm not going to talk when I'm using the secondary camera, so don't worry about anything. Don't worry about missing anything. So I'll only talk to this camera. Okay, so we're reheating, heating up the oil, and we're going to deep fry these. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. I think I've given you both recipes, or we'll give you both recipes. You can either deep fry these, or you can also, once you fill them, you can also put them in a bagno maria. So put this in like one of these, something like this. Put a couple inches or a finger of water, something like that, a thumb of water, and then you can cook them like that. If you do that, they're going to be flavored with water versus actually get crispy. So whatever you want. If you want to eat less oil, then put this, once you fill them, then add a finger of water in here, and then you're going to bake like that. If you want to, since we already have the oil, we're going to fry them. And then I'm going to cut this up. Okay, so rough chop on that. Hand that off to if you have a personal assistant, hand that off to her. In the meantime, I'm going to do this. If you all humor me for 1 second, let me figure out this audio scenario. I'm going to count and tell me if you can hear me continue to count. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9. Could you hear me? Could you hear me on the other camera as well? I can hear you now. Could you hear me? Can you hear me? Did everyone hear me count to 8? No, okay, I'm only going to talk to this camera from now on, so when I'm doing the other camera, do not worry about getting audio. I won't say anything while I'm using the secondary camera. So I'm going to crack some olives. So all I'm doing is taking a water glass, and yes, I realize that now. I'm gonna continue doing this. We only have half an hour left. Continue this. I'll only talk when I'm using this camera. I won't talk when I'm using the secondary camera. But there's some certain things you're going to want to see it on close up. So I will not talk when I'm on this camera, on the close up camera. So if it's not clear what I'm doing is I'm using a water glass to crack some olives, and I'm taking putting the pit right in the water glass, so you never need to worry about it being one sneaking into the food. I'm going to do maybe 20 of these. If anyone else has any comments or questions while I'm doing this, now is a really good time for questions. All right, so what I have now is I have my melanzana, my filling, and I'm going to add some Parmesan. I'm not going to add any salt other than the Parmesan, so quite a bit of Parmesan. I'm going to add some of these diced tomatoes. A little bit of breadcrumbs. Olive oil. E l'olio come sta?
Abbastanza forte.
Ok. Quando voi lo metti qua? Okay, in this mixture, I'm also going to crack an egg, which will obviously help it stay together. And I'm essentially going to put this to the side for now. Here's a quick shot of it. What looks like. Oh, I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I had this mixture to put this aside until after we fry the eggplants. Anna, qual è una domanda di Elena? Qual è il tuo piatto di autunno preferito durante la settimana?
Legumi vari, fave.
She said legumes, fava beans or broad beans,
Ceci,
chickpeas,
la zucca,
a pumpkin,
cicorie.
chicory. So Anna does not. She eats. I would say she eats more ingredients than dishes. She doesn't really put a lot of things together. She eats very simple things, and she eats about as much as you guess she would. So Anna lived in Germany when she was a teenager, and so she picked up the habit of eating a really big breakfast. Tu mangi più calorie durante la colazione?
Sì.
She eats a very big breakfast and then very light lunch and never any lunch and very light dinner. But she picks at some salad. I mean, you can look at her and tell. All right, so I'm gonna hopefully this is gonna be getting hot. Yeah, I'm gonna wait another 30 seconds on this, and I'm gonna have a little wine. If anyone has any questions, now's a good time. Mi dai la pasta? Ci scelgono. All right, so I think the oil is going to be hot enough now. I'm going to put this in. Yeah, it's definitely floating. Yes, Michael, I can see why you would think that. Yeah, and I don't, and I'm overweight, and she's not. But if you saw how much she smokes, you wouldn't be so happy about that. So hopefully this is not going to cover up our only good microphone here. when it starts popping and sizzling. How much oil? This is actually seed oil because this would be very expensive. We're also out of our oil for the year because the season's so long ago. New oil coming out next month. And if you use olive oil, it's not only really expensive but also very high, really strong in flavor because of the olive oil. So this is seed oil. It's up to there. I mean, when you're deep frying, you want it to recover as fast as possible. So the stronger your flame, the less oil you can use because your temperature is going to come back. If you have a really low flame, you need to use more oil and you have to preheat it much longer. Any other questions? Okay, so another 30 seconds or so. I'm done. I can move it on. Let's put the gas on. Again, as I said this before several of you arrived, I'll repeat it. We don't normally deep fry anything. Tonight, because these three dishes are one Daniel asked for one dish, so we wanted to do that for him because he's a frequent flyer. And then also the other two dishes, because we had the oil already, we decided to include them this week. But we won't be frying again probably for the rest of the year. It's not a common occurrence to deep fry here. So if you see this, got some color on that. I'm going to pull that out now. Just going right into our baking dish. In the meantime, Anna is going to fry a third of the pasta in that olive oil. All right. And then we'll take this mixture. While she's frying the pasta, put this right in here. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of the melanzane is it's a brown food. It's hard to make it look pretty. But we are going to add some parsley over the top of it. That's it. And cheese. And then this is going to go into the oven. There's a close-up with no audio. Close-up. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. So this is going to go into the oven now. And then you can see these are going to be probably another minute. But any of you that have ever eaten fried wonton strips or fried tortilla in a soup, that's exactly the same concept. You get a crunchy bite. Daniel's had the dish several times. He says that, you can read his comments, but that it gives it a nice crunchy. Yes, it's very, very much like tortilla soup in that respect. All right, since we only have 15 minutes left, we're going to start doing double things. All right, so these are some potatoes that we've boiled in advance. We're going to peel them. While we're doing this, Michael, if you want to comment anything on the difference between the health benefits of chilled potato, cooked and chilled versus raw versus cooked and hot. Michael, if you're around. So there's obviously boiled potatoes, and we tend to boil potatoes whole. It's not, if you're doing it in a restaurant, you definitely cut them up because they boil it more evenly. This makes the outside of the cell rupture. But this is how people do it in homes, which is definitely the kind of cooking that we're doing as a school. But also the show is definitely not restaurant cooking. It's definitely homespun. Perfect. fai una cosa, lascia acceso tutto quanto, però sposti l'olio, magari mettilo su tavola, perché ancora ci vuole 2 secondi per questo qua.
Se non è sposto non ci Spengo?
È uguale. Sì, sì, sì.
Spengo.
Tanto non ci voleva accendere per accendere. Fai questo qua?
Sì.
No starch in cool potatoes becomes resistant starch, which is why more like fiber than sugar and feeds the gut bacteria. Oh, that's interesting. When I was in New York, Michael and I were talking about this, why potatoes as they chill really change their properties so much. All right, so here we have some just boiled peeled potatoes, and probably very much like you guys, we're going to use a ricer. I'm just going to push this through. So the beauty of the ricer is the potatoes are only going to pass through once, versus if you're using a beater, you're going to keep breaking down essentially make glue by breaking down the cells and releasing too much starch. So a ricer is a really good way of making mashed potatoes, or any kind of puree. Yeah, I have this Mac. A lot of my keys don't work anymore because I have food in them from this show. All right. So here we have mashed potatoes that have run through a puree. I will show you them on our. No, I can't show you. The other camera's not working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Parmesan cheese, an egg, some parsley. If you want to, you can also put mint inside. A little bit of breadcrumbs. The potatoes are boiled in salted water, but I'm going to add more. Pepper. One of the very few dishes we use pepper here. And now, this is going to get very complicated because I'm going to try to do this without getting my hands dirty because I still need to use the keyboard. So, let's mix all this together. Anna and I were talking about this before we turn this on. Even she and I do this differently. I use oil. She doesn't. ¿Tú usas oil o no? Okay. Okay. So what I tend to do is here's a plate where I put just some olive oil. Put my hands in that. She doesn't do that. So we're gonna take this. We're gonna do these like halfway small short cigars. Adesso voi sigari più strict. So that's maybe a little bit thicker than a cigar.
Sì, è proprio buono.
Yeah. And it's also important to get these more or less the same size because they are going to run them to cook in the same amount of time, and you don't want to have a fat one and a skinny one. Ok, io finisco, se vuoi mettere l'olio. If anyone has any questions or comments, now is a really good time. This is the kind of antipasto that if I were serving these, this would be a standing up antipasto before anyone when you have people come into the kitchen and they say that they're there to help you or whatever else. This would be this was the kind of thing that I would serve to them while they're standing around. Is it all available? It's all. Yes, Santina. So the second I turn this off, this becomes a video. So this is a live transmission right now. But the second I turn it off, then you can go back and watch it as many times as you want. All right, so now I have these potatoes and I'm just rolling them in breadcrumbs, which is going to make the outside nice and crunchy. I'd say don't ever throw away bread, especially if you're trying to cook in a Southern Italian manner, because breadcrumbs goes into everything. It's often called the cheese of the poor. Yeah. Yes. I'll tell you what, Steve, if you give me 1 second, I will gladly talk about, I'll tell you what, can we talk about Castel del Monte during the Zoom session? Because I was just here, I just got back from there yesterday, and I just worked the harvest yesterday. So there's some, if you look at my Facebook, you'll see a couple of pictures too. Give me 1 second to wash my hands because I can't use my keyboard like this. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to start dropping these in. And they're just plugging away, just like everything else is deep fried. When you're deep frying, you always want to expect, again, don't look at today as being really indicative. We don't normally deep fry lots of, personally I deep fry maybe at home maybe 3 or 4 times a year. It's not common for me to do it. But when you're filling your oil, you never want to go over halfway because you're going to have a lot of air inside of the air coming out as being expressed as bubbles. And it's going to really foam up. So I'm always surprised by women in here when they cook. They fill up, they take a little teeny pot, fill it up all the way with oil, and then really worried about it coming off over the top. And also, you cook like a whole artichoke. I've been cooking artichokes in homes with people. They have an oil pot this big, and the artichoke is this big, and of course it's going to be really take forever for the oil to come back to temperature because the amount of oil versus the mass of the things that they're frying. Visto che non riesco a vedere vicino, no, rosso vale ancora di più, che di solito. All right. Come mi fanno pasta?
Posso colarla? Mi c'è quella
I brulli ci sono lì. Ok. Faccio questo qua, attenzione. So if you can see, nice and brown coming along. I'll crack into one of these. The salt's already inside, but if you want to add more salt, and these are definitely something, it's fried foods. These are not going to be good half an hour from now. So I'm going to pull these out. And again, this would be something that we really want to serve to someone. really like standing up and make sure that they eat it right away. So this would be, I think I always call them Antipasto, the thing you would eat in the kitchen when your guests are first arriving. Right here we have the chickpeas and the broth that was produced from making them, right? So, okay. So we're going to bring this back. We're bringing this back to a boil, and then we're going to take the raw pasta, the pasta that's not been fried, and she's going to add that right to this. So chicharitia, there's also an interesting thing about it is whenever someone tells me that they've had it at the restaurant, was asking is it served with a spoon or with a fork. So some versions are really brothy. This one's gonna be really brothy just because we only made so much pasta because we don't have a lot of time. Normally we wouldn't be making this much. It would be for 5 or 10 people or whatever else. So this version is going to have more broth, and I'll just pour that out so you can get an idea of it. So the croquettes, yeah, essentially mashed potatoes. If you want to, you can use mint inside. That's a classic. I use parsley because mint's hard to find. And that's the flavor. That's perfect. Yeah. All right. So then once this pasta is soft, this is going to be another, I don't know, 35 seconds or so because it is so fresh. We're going to add the fried pasta. So this is the fried pasta. I know all of you, except for maybe Vittorio, have had this dish because you've all been in school and you were all here during colder months. All right. So here we have the pasta, the chickpeas, and the pasta. And then I'm just going to do it. So you can either add this as the very last thing as a garnish. What we tend to do is add it in for about 1 minute, and then it's halfway between being really crispy and sort of, it's like more like bacon. Okay. So I'm going to pull this out, and I'll pour some broth on top of it because there's just too much broth, but you all get an idea. No, there are no vegetables in the bowl. Dana, all the vegetables are in this were just to produce the vegetable broth or the vegetable bouillon. So there's absolutely. So this is chicharitia, which is, I'm sorry that I need to figure out this camera. But it is with the fried pasta, the boiled pasta, and the chickpea broth. Dana, to your question, the vegetables were tossed, so they were only used to make the broth very flavorful. This is one of the dishes when we make this, a lot of people call it a sleeper dish because it doesn't look like it's going to be nearly as good as it is. And it's really those vegetables that produce the broth that are sort of backstage and you never really see them. Inevitably, I've been doing this for 18 years, inevitably when we make this dish, there is people think there's something. What did you do to it? Why can't I think there's some magical steps to it or something? It's because you think carrot, celery, and onion, that's essentially an uncut mirepoix, right? You think, well, how much flavor can they really give? But it's a lot. So that's chicharitia. We're going to put parsley on top of this. You want to serve this with spicy oil? You absolutely could. You never, ever put cheese on this. Here's the recipe for that. right, so that's that, and then we're out of time now. But if you can see this is the melanzane. So this is a great great dish if you have people that want to eat vegetarian alongside people that don't. So this would be a reaching across the aisle between vegetarians and non-vegetarians, because you'll never miss the meat, and it's also as an anchor. So especially a lot of men that don't want to eat vegetarian, because there's no focus of the plate. You're just eating from a big bowl. There's no hero, right? So if you're trying to get carnivores to eat more vegetarian, think about having an anchor or something that's sort of the star of the show that they can really focus on. Because if you say, "What did you eat last night?" Most men in the English-speaking world will say the protein. I had chicken. I had a steak. Right? They ate 9 things, but they're only going to focus on that. So if you really want to get men to eat, it's really men to eat more vegetables, have something they can really give them a focal point on their plate, and it'll be easier for them to do it. And then the last thing, I'm sorry, running late here. The last thing we have is, there's nothing really to see, but it's called sopra tavola or sovra tavola, which means above the table. And it's raw chicory, raw fennel, raw celery, and raw carrots, all served in ice water. And so Michael can talk about this either now or in the Zoom session, but this does a couple different things. One, you have crunchy vegetables, and especially when you have the chicory, so it satisfies on a level of crunch, almost like pretzels would, right? But you're also putting a lot of fiber on top of your food, so you're essentially creating locomotion through your digestive tract, right? And then you also have the chicory, which has bitterness in it, which your body perceives as poison, so it's going to ramp up your digestive juices. So this is a very, very healthy way of ending a meal. It's often served with the last glass of red wine. If you don't serve it like this, you can also put it in a glass of, did I already maybe do this? Take a glass of red wine and serve all the vegetables sticking out of the glass of red wine, and you have the last couple of sips of wine and then some raw vegetables. So it's essentially crudité, but it is, if you go to the countryside or go to Sagre, and we know the Sagre, the sort of country food festivals, this in Puglia every single time. So if you want to call it pizzimonio, you could, and serve this with olive oil, which is essentially crudité in France, but a really healthy way, and also sort of underlines how much there's a desire for vegetables here. So I'll show you the last recipe, and then I think we can move over to Zoom. For Santina and Scott, you two are new. There's a Zoom link on my profile. You'll see it everywhere. We're going to go over there and have a half an hour, just kind of open conversation for anyone that wants to talk. It's not mandatory, but it's there if you want it. And here is did I already give you the recipes? I think I'm missing this one, I think. All right, I think I've given you all 3 recipes. So ciccheria, the panzerotti or coquette di patate, and le barche, the little egg. So Dana, to your question about adding the vegetables, by the time they boil all day long in the chickpea broth, they have given up all their essence. So occasionally when I'm working and I don't ever, I feel like my blood sugar dropping, and I'll see the vegetables sitting there in a colander, and I'll grab a piece and eat them. But they have no fiber anymore, and they have no flavor. And the carrots are really, they've given it all to the broth. So if you wanted to grind them up, so keep in mind also, I'm teaching regional cooking. This is how it's done here. It's your job to take what I've just showed you and make it applicable for your family. If you want to leave the vegetables whole, it's not the same dish. I would not call it the same dish. I would not use the same name for it. If you want to call it chickpea pasta, whatever, alla Dana would it be in Italian? Then absolutely do that. But I wouldn't, because that's no longer the dish. And but I certainly understand your desire to get more vegetables into your family's mouths. So I think it's a great idea, but it also underlines the differences of what our two focuses are, mine and yours. Yours is putting food on the table for your family, nourishing their bodies and showing them that you love them, you're taking care of them, fulfilling yourself as a mother. And mine is showing you how people do things here. Right? So while there's a lot of overlap, it's not 100% overlap. So yeah, absolutely. Throw some peas in there too. Add bell pepper, whatever helps you. If you get some more vegetables into your family's faces, then it's a great idea. But it's for me, what my focus is you had women that had almost no resources for hundreds of years, right, in this part of the world, and they figured out through workarounds how to make food taste as best as possible with the very humble ingredients that they had. Right, so to garnish that, to keep adding lobster to it or cheese or whatever else, you're canceling out that human ingenuity that makes the dish interesting, in my opinion. So that's my focus, right? Again, for you, adding to it and riffing on it and making it yours is an excellent idea. And the very first thing I would do is I would add more vegetables to it. You could also, if you wanted to, take half your carrots, half your celery, and half your onions, leave them whole. So half the quantity, leave them whole. Cook your broth, and then add raw vegetables towards the end, so you get the flavor and the texture of the vegetables, and also all the flavor of the broth. Okay, if I didn't do the potato recipe, here it is. All right, I think I've given you all three of the recipes. We're 9 minutes late. Sorry about that, but we're gonna go over to the Zoom session. I'm gonna try to do half an hour of Zoom today, so we're not cut off. And I always feel guilty cutting it off, so let's do a little bit shorter. By the way, if anyone has a Zoom account that we can use, that we don't have to pay any additional fees, I would love to use that. So at this point, I can't really justify the expense. So anyway, so I'm going to say goodbye here. Santina, to your question, this is going to become a video in the group, and you can watch this as many times as you'd like. And hopefully, when you rewatch the rewind, I'm not going to have the same camera issues. So I'll see you over in Zoom. Bye bye.
Ciao, vi vogliamo bene. Un bacio a
Vi vogliamo
tutti.
bene. Okay. So see you all soon.